First item of business would be the minutes and the letters. Has everybody an opportunity to look them over? Maybe would like a motion to approve the minutes and or the letters.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the letters with one correction. On the meetings, page 3 at the bottom, says installation of a westbound let turn lane. I think it should be a left turn lane.
That's on the minutes.
Yes, page 3 at the bottom.
With that correction, there's a motion on the table to approve the minutes and the letters.
I second that.
There's a second on the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I abstain, am I going to mess up on?
No, you're not.
Thank you.
Let's take a vote on the matter. This is to approve the minutes and the letters with the correction of left to left on the third page of the minutes. Take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. With the abstention, nod.
Since I wasn't here.
2 abstains. We're still fine. We got a quorum and 3 voted for. The real question I've got is whether we should proceed without our law counsel here.
I think you could do double duty.
I don't think I can. Pretty damn sure I can, actually. But let's go ahead and do that.
Do triple duty, I think.
Let's go ahead and move to the first matter. And if we could have, I assume you represent the, who are we at? Cheekwood? Wonderful. All right, y'all are welcome to come on up to the table. If we could get staff to go ahead and read a summary of the request into the record. Oh, yeah, let's do opening statement. Apologize. Thank you, Penny.
The opening statement to the applicant. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you, Ben. Now let's go to the staff for a summary of the request.
The first case on the agenda is case number 2018-00020, Cheekwood Botanical Garden and Museum of Art. Address is 1200 Forest Park Drive. APN number is 129-120-13400. Inspector is Lee Nelson. Council District 34, Angie Henderson. Applicant's request is to allow the following: disturbance and encroachment of the 30-foot Zone 1 buffer of stream by grading trails, adding impervious trail surface, constructing boardwalk, and adding irrigation. Continuous invasive removal and maintenance of proposed plantings within the Zone 1 buffer. Landscape architect is stamping drawings, not a licensed engineer, and request to work with staff to develop an alternate buffer sign. Appellant is Peter Grimaldi, Cheekwood Botanical Garden and Museum of Art, represented by Gary Hawkins, Hawkins Partners Incorporated. Comment: Stormwater staff, the proposed mitigation appears to offset the buffer disturbance. Code said no comment. Planning site is zoned R20, defer to Stormwater for review. Greenways defers to the comments of the Stormwater Management Committee.
Thank you. Now let's turn it over to the applicant for its opportunity to present.
Good morning. Thank you for letting us come in this morning and discussing what we believe is a really amazing opportunity for Nashville, but also Cheekwood. We brought a presentation. I assume it will be in front of you on the screen, maybe a little smaller than I get to see, but I'll be referring to that presentation as we move through together. So we'll see how this goes. There's the mouse. So we'll give you an overview of the context of the project, just because I think it's significant to understand that, the scope of what we're planning to do, why we're asking for the variance or variances, and then the mitigating measures that we're taking to make this be a much better project than we were starting with. So the site, you're probably all familiar with Cheekwood location out where just past the south of the 7100 split. It's not the entire project. The project is not the entire parcel of land, and we'll zoom in on that a little bit, perhaps better for you to see. The lower left-hand segment of the project, Cheekwood's property, is the important aspect of today's conversation, our area of interest, I'll call it. So Cheekwood Estate and Garden was developed in the 1930s, 32 or so it's been around a long time. But interestingly, this part of the site has been virtually wooded and undisturbed for the extent of that. It's a large woodland property that you'll see there have been some improvements, very minor improvements. The majority of the site is a garden. It's a lawn and trees. Come on, next. There we go. So I thought it would be good for you to hear a little bit from the Vice President of Gardens and Facilities, Peter Grimaldi, is here representing Cheekwood, to tell you a little bit about the significance of this place, just as a tiny bit of background. So, Peter.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you to the committee for entertaining our request this morning. Again, my name is Peter Grimaldi. I'm the Vice President of Gardens and Facilities. And Cheekwood's mission is to celebrate history and excellence in art and horticulture. And we do that in a number of ways at Cheekwood, and like to market ourselves as Nashville's own national treasure, and definitely a tourist destination for people across the region and across the country, but also a real asset to the community. And we serve our community in various ways, beginning with a membership base of over 14,000 member households. And what we're seeing now is attendance is holding steady, but gate revenue is actually going down, which in a way is a good problem to have, because by the numbers, we're seeing that increasingly we're an asset to the community and less of a tourist destination. But so art and horticulture, other ways that we activate our mission is through school programs, and Cheekwood, at no cost to the schools or school districts, hosts nearly 12,000 school kids a year and lead them through various art and nature-based activities. And then in horticulture and by kind of mobilizing our best practices, we've formed several strategic partnerships with Tennessee State University. We're registered as a Level 4 Arboretum and a Center for Excellence by the Urban Forestry Council, demonstrating best practices in arboriculture. We've recently joined the Metro Tree Advisory Council and are trying to join forces with parks and the Tree Foundation and other organizations in the city to really kind of get the word out there on emerald ash borer and this response and responsibility that the community has to respond to this epidemic. But what we're talking about here, Cheekwood, again, Nashville's own national treasure, is all about creating beauty. And art and horticulture is, frankly, manufactured beauty. So the project at hand and the variance involved in this project is it takes the art and the horticulture and it puts it in the woods and creates and celebrates a natural link between our mission and the local and the native ecology, and gives us an opportunity to interpret that and share that with the community through all of the same programs and partnerships that I've already mentioned. So really excited about this opportunity to kind of build our focus on that as we move forward.
Thank you, Peter. So the area that we were talking about that is mostly woodland. You can see on the screen, perhaps, there's mainly woods. It's about a quarter of the site. And if you go to Cheekwood, you may have never visited this area of the site because it's pretty undeveloped, except for a footpath, a mulch footpath that's called the Carroll Woodland Sculpture Trail. And that the alignment is shown in this drawing through those woods. But unfortunately, in 1996 or so, it was laid out kind of roughly in the woods, and over time it's been a bit weather-worn and a little confusing to navigate. So we were hired to develop an improvement to this that gave accessibility to people with strollers or elderly or ADA compliance to part of the trail. So you'll see some of these improvements as we move forward. So it's a woodland trail, it is that, but the beauty of the trail, which was unusual for any garden like this, is to encounter extraordinary pieces of art in the woods, and those pieces of art are there. So our task was to figure out how do we improve this system of trails for Cheekwood, for this community that they're serving, and also not have to move these big pieces of sculpture around the woodland. That would not be, so we're trying to work with that asset that's there. Part of what we did for the first time, I think, was develop topographic assessments, figure out where the trail actually was, where the sculptures actually were in survey form, and locate. You'll also see dots perhaps on your screen here. If you can squint and see the red dots, we assessed all of the tree species that were 8-inch DBH or larger, and that big red line at the upper left-hand corner is ash trees. Unfortunately, the ash tree, like the chestnut, is getting ready to be extinct. And Cheekwood, like other woodlands adjacent to it, is having to address that as part of this now known survey of information for what trees are out there. The other part of the assessment, there was a little waterway that cut through the site. It was not a blue line on any map, but we thought we should have that assessed to make sure whatever improvements we were going to make wouldn't have any negative impact on the water quality there. So BDY did an assessment for us of that area, and their hydrologic determination found that, in fact, the screen move to the next slide. You can see the existing trails in black. The blue line there is actually stream. It's BDY's determination was we do have a stream. It's sort of spring fed. It mostly has water in it when we have ample water in the ground, but it is a stream. And there are some other waterways that lead to it that are not streams. But the reason we're here today is we've made that determination early on in the process and determined that we have a buffer, just like any other blue line stream, and we wanted to make sure we're respecting that buffer. It's not a beautiful stream. It's on screen, I don't know if you can see it, but the ground cover that's in the area is vinca and some other invasive exotics. There are culverts there today that are not particularly beautiful. They were put in probably in the 90s to get access to maintain the sculpture in this mulch woodland path. So while we do have a stream, it's not in our mind's eye what we all think of as a Middle Tennessee beautiful stream, but it does have water in it many times, and we wanted to respect that as we're building this new improved trail system. Come on, next slide. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't read this at all, but I'll try my best to explain. So in order to do the trail design, we had 3 major goals. Those goals were to increase usability of the trails. We realize that not everyone now can get on the trail system. It's a bit damaged with erosion. It's mulch. The mulch washes. So there are aspects of the trail that you just can't really get on most of the time. Goal number 2 would be to create a trail experience that balances the wild in the design. So this is Cheekwood Garden. So the implementation of the trail that emphasizes natives and heightens the experience of what one would see in a woodland walk is the goal of one of the goals of that. We also wanted to finally create an unrivaled outdoor art and sculpture experience. So those are our guiding principles for the new trail design. So this was the existing trail, and you can see the black lines, the kind of spaghetti. If you were out there, you'd probably find people wandering around, where am I? That we saw that every time we were out there. So we want to improve that, and so that array of trails turns into this very simplified 2 loops. And what those loops do are get people closer to that blue line without being in it. We're getting rid of culverts that are in the way of that blue line. We're also creating one bridge that crosses the main from loop to loop and creating a boardwalk experience as we get close to the water so that you can actually see it for the first time and realize it as an asset, a woodland stream on Cheekwood's property. Today, you don't really get a chance to see it. You can actually walk a ford through it, which we're going to eliminate to improve water quality. So the reasons for the variance request that staff mentioned, we're asking to disturb and encroach on the 30-foot Zone 1 buffer. That's now designated as a stream buffer. And we're putting trails in that buffer like we would do, I think, in a lot of our greenway projects in Nashville we've had an opportunity to work with. The trail surface will be paved in the buffer in some locations, but in other locations we're elevating boardwalk on piers off the back side of the top of bank so that you can look over to the stream but not get into the stream. Preventing people from getting into the stream is fairly important, but we want to be able to get people aware that there is a stream there. We also want to construct an irrigation system. The irrigation system is unusual in that it's a woodland irrigation system. We can't cut into the ground, but we want to have an at grade irrigation system above grade so that all plantings that are put in have this level of water support so that we'll get a great garden as opposed to just planting in the woods and hoping for the best. So we'll have good ground coverage and good thriving, healthy vegetation because the irrigation system will be in that buffer. The continuous invasive exotic removals is another variance. This is an ongoing process, and if we have any questions about how Cheekwood approaches that with their volunteer army, there will be an initial effort to get some of that invasive exotic material out of the stream that you saw in the photographs, and then replant with species that are appropriate to a woodland stream in Middle Tennessee, and that will be interpreted in that buffer zone. We're also asking, which is unusual, we don't get to come before you very often because by law we weren't able to come before you. We want to stamp the drawings as landscape architects, and that I believe is maybe for the first time as landscape architects we'll be stamping the grading plans, and that's a variance request because that final decision to do that, I guess, is not thumbs up from on the books.
I think it was thumbs up, but it hadn't been into the code.
It's not in code yet. And then finally, alternative signage for the making people be aware of the buffer is something we'd like to work with. And I'll show you some just final images of all these and just if I can get the mouse to advance. So here we are. There's our blue line on the screen, and you can see the yellow buffer zone around that we're asking for some of this work to incur within. Part of that's in the buffer is partly hard surface asphalt trail. It's only 6 feet wide. What you are going to not be able to see, unfortunately, on the left-hand side of the screen is how the boardwalk will be elevated above and nearby the stream, where you'll actually be able to see the stream but not access the stream. The piers will be behind the top of banks, so we're not getting into the stream itself to construct the structural elements of the stream. I'm sorry, of the boardwalk. And continuing on with the next slide, same. So the blue line is the center line of our stream, and you can see we're in and out of that buffer zone with our boardwalk and some of the trail development. These remaining slides have to do with all the planting that's going to happen. There are thousands of plants and species being added to this woodland as part of this project. And the woodland aspect of that is key. We're working with Cheekwood and their botanical staff to determine exactly the species we want to showcase in the stream buffer. Okay, so the mitigation, finally, I guess, is how I guess we'd like to feel like we're doing the right thing here. Number one, invest in an elevated boardwalk along the stream to view and interpret, but eliminate foot traffic in the stream, and allow the path to be for users to see and understand the stream and water quality and plant material that should be in the native woodland without damaging the stream in any way. So improving water quality by doing that. Careful removal of invasive exotics in the stream corridors, another mitigating measure. Removal of gravel fords and culvert crossings and letting those become natural streams, stream expressions in this plan, and replace those crossings where we're eliminating those crossings and allowing one major crossing with a bridge and a minor crossing with another bridge. Native landscape installation that's supported by irrigation. And then another aspect is trees in the project area, and I may have missed that slide. It's after this? Okay.
Scroll down, that's it, right.
Okay, so with Peter and Cheekwood, we met with staff from the it's our
forestry agent.
Forestry agent, yes. And it was like, okay, we've got all these ash trees. What are we going to do with this? And one solution is, if you're going to have a trail, you can't have trees near the trail that could fall as they die and damage because of the emerald ash borer epidemic. We can't have those trees be near this trail. So we have a choice. Get rid of all the trees in this woods, which will be a very hard decision to make, the trees that are ash trees, or Cheekwood's made the decision, if the trees are within the trail limits and limbs or the tree can fall, they're going to protect those ash trees. And that means you sign up for years and years and years of treatment to protect those ash trees. So it is conceivable, and this may not be a stretch, 10 years from now, when the rest of the ash trees in Middle Tennessee are gone, this trail may have some of the few healthy living ash trees because of the commitment Cheekwood's going to make as a mitigation measure to save these trees, so children and our grandkids may be able to see ash trees in Middle Tennessee, very few places, and Cheekwood, this trail will be one of them. And then finally, interpreting some of these things, that because there are a lot of people that visit here that wouldn't have a clue about what this is all about, there'll be interpretive signage within not only the buffer, but also this entire trail system to tell those stories about ash trees, tell the stories about stream buffers, tell the stories about native vegetation and water quality. So we think for those reasons, these mitigating measures far outweigh us being in a buffer for a newly designated stream, and that's why we'd like the variances to be granted. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but I think it's a big story to tell, and thank you for letting us tell it.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf or opposed to this project, the variance request? Seeing none, we'll turn to comments and discussion from the committee. We've been waiting on you for 2 months.
I've been watching the videos.
You saw us just looking at each other going, what do we do? Don's not here.
No, that's not what I saw on the recording. Apparently I have a reputation for speaking first, so. All right, so I'll live up to it. So it looks like you're going to remove 10 trees. Is that right? Did I count right? The X's on your diagrams?
The trees that are obviously in the route of the trail.
Okay, 10. Okay.
There are probably more than 10. There are 10 8-inch DBH and up.
Okay, that's what the 10 means, okay. And so how many trees are you going to plant back in the Zone 1? That's the number I didn't hear.
It may take us a second to get to that number,
Okay.
but it's extensive.
It may be big.
It's
Okay.
extensive.
Okay. You have a ballpark?
Would 50 be outside?
Between canopy and understory, likely the planting plan, again, because the project is beyond, I'd say about probably 30 to 50. It is heavily wooded, so some of our tree replacement happens just outside of the buffer or on the edge of the buffer. So I think about 50 probably is a safe bet, and we could provide that number too.
50 in the Zone 1, is that kind of, or is that?
The point being made is we're not really disturbing with any grading or cut or fill within the Zone 1 buffer, except for a little bit of trail building. So tree removal will be limited, and it's a fully wooded site. So we'll be augmenting some of that woodland in the buffer, but it's going to be pretty protected as it stands today.
Okay. So how many feet of existing trail overlaps the trail that runs through the Zone 1? Any of it, or?
The Zone 1 was not
impacted
by the original mulch trail.
Okay.
Except for crossing.
There was
literally a ford that you can walk across in the water.
And the culvert.
Yeah, and the culverts.
Culverted crossings.
I guess the thing I'm trying to grapple with is, we obviously have a public policy precedent of sorts with public properties, greenways, creating new paths in formerly vegetated buffers. And part of that public purpose is to get people close to the resource, to learn about it, and to add additional value to it by holding it in public ownership and improving it naturally and recreationally. And so you all are trying to achieve a similar purpose. You certainly have a similar mission.
Yes.
And it's very admirable that you went looking for the stream. It wasn't like somebody came to you and said, "Here's a stream. Oh, you got to take this into account." So there's a certain amount of conscientiousness involved in trying to do the right thing here.
Thank you.
And I guess it sounds like staff said that the mitigation is appropriate. I guess my only question would be is it appropriate enough from your all's perspective in terms of they are grading within the Zone 1, just like Greenways grades within the Zone 1 when they create a new trail. Is the mitigation appropriate for the amount of new disturbance that's going on if it's kind of jumping in and out of the Zone 1 buffer?
So I'll defer to Rebecca on the mitigation, but I will say that Greenways does have an exemption to be in the buffers for their trails. I think the applicant stated they're kind of putting the trail. They're really not doing any grading except for maybe one little small area, but I think most of it is just at-grade placement. And then, like I said, I'll defer on the mitigation.
Okay, so in other words, they're just putting asphalt on the ground because or gravel and asphalt on the ground because it's level enough to do so.
There is slope that we're it's an interesting dilemma. It's like we have right now no ADA access to this part of the woods.
Okay.
So trying to find gradients that allow us to have everyone have access to that was a huge goal for Cheekwood.
Yeah.
So there are sloping trail areas which will be cutting across the grain of a hill, but in the most delicate way that we can do that to achieve those accessibility goals.
Okay. That makes sense. So you're following the floodplain to create
Yes.
a nice smooth grade for ADA accessibility
Yes.
as well. Okay. And just to make clear, it's not really ideal to reduce plant density in a buffer, even though you're not grading. If you put asphalt there, you're eliminating the opportunity for a tree to be there or a plant to be there. And when a plant or a tree is not there, they're not storing water, they're not sequestering carbon, they're not providing habitat. Asphalt's not a great habitat. But you're mitigating that with all these extra plantings, and the staff feels like that's appropriate. And so I think I'm good.
Can I make one small note? I don't think there's floodplain here. I think it's just a stream buffer, but no floodplain.
Because it's a headwater stream. Okay. Which is probably why it didn't show up to begin with.
What's the licensing issue? We're going to let landscape architects start coming in?
Okay, so back in the 1999 regs, we had a provision that allowed for landscape architects to come in with grading-only plans. With the 2007 regs, that portion was actually taken out. And then subsequently after that, just recently, we've been dealing with some landscape architects, and they've came in, they described their educational background and what they do as far as the schooling. We at Development Services has talked to the AE board and got their advice. And from what we could tell, they do appear adequate to be doing like grading plans only, as long as there's not extensive hydraulic calculations. So it's not in the regs, but we will be looking at moving forward to consider it again. So in the meantime, it's not something in the regs, so we've asked them to include it within the.
So under our regs, a variance request requires a stamp of a PE,
Yes, sir.
and we don't have one here, so that's one of the variance requests.
Well, for the grading permit, it requires a PE stamp.
The grading permit requires a PE
Yes, sir.
stamp.
But it also requires a PE stamp on the checklist. It says grading, drainage, erosion control, and a site plan would have to be by an engineer. So I guess if you're going to approve that, you'd either have to just approve it for this case or approve it for all cases and amend the checklist.
Well, we are going to be.
We can't amend the checklist.
We are looking at the checklist anyway. That was a task that was brought before staff to update the checklist. I did receive feedback. We will be looking at the checklist. We may temporarily leave that little portion out until we figure out the bigger picture, how we're going to move forward. But in the meantime, we thought it'd be prudent to go ahead and just put that in as one of the requests.
And this is where legal counsel needs to be here. But this is, is this part, is this part of the code that requires the
It is
PE?
part of the code that requires a PE. So until the code and the stormwater management manual are changed, we ask them to ask for a variance from that. So it will be a case-by-case situation until we get those changed.
I don't know that. That's what I'm concerned with. I don't know that I can do that.
Okay, so development staff was okay with it moving forward, and if you guys don't feel that you're okay, that's a different story.
I think almost everyone here is going to say, yeah, this is a great idea, stamp it, but the question is whether or not we can grant that. I just don't know that we have the authority Or quite frankly, what's the hardship for not getting PE other than paying for it? I mean, I understand that.
Right. I guess personally, since it's not in the code, I don't feel comfortable allowing that variance.
Setting a precedent, this will be the first one if we're approved, correct?
It will be we've approved architectural stamps prior to 2007, when it was in the manual.
But now that it isn't, this would be the first one under the new codes.
This
It's
one
not
would
in the
be
manual.
the first one.
Okay, now that's different. So we need Terry here. It's in the code, but yet in 2000,
No, sir.
No.
It was in the code with the 99 regs.
It's taken out.
It was taken out.
when we say it was in the code, we mean,
It was in our stormwater management manual in the 1999
but
manual.
what's it? In 1999,
You were allowed to have
it specifically said a landscape architect
could stamp grading only.
stamp
plans.
grading only
Yes,
plans.
sir.
And that was part of the code or just the manual?
It was part of the manual.
But
Rebecca,
the code hasn't changed.
Say, I don't believe the code has ever changed to allow for that.
That's an important
So
point.
our-
Probably why it was taken out.
And we learned a tough lesson when we went through before, and our code didn't always match our manual. So our code and our manual now match. But I believe
I see.
you are able to grant variances from the code. But, yeah, this would be a good one for Terry to be here on.
you guys, the committee does grant variances on code, such as 1728-040. That's the floodplain.
As the code defines. I don't know that this is defined as a basis for a variance. Does anybody have the language that they can read us for the basis for a variance? Maybe there's some phrase in there that justifies this type of variance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you're saying is that when we're granting a variance on a code requirement, in the code, it actually says we can do that.
I think it makes sense to me that it would list the conditions for the variance. And so if there's anything related to this type of condition
Would it be
that we
appropriate-
as non-Metro General Counsel can understand and feel confident about, then we can make a decision. Without counsel to interpret that, we're unfortunately stuck.
Would it be appropriate, is it possible to have a decision on your part, and then we'll check with legal if that's okay?
You mean like a conditional decision?
Approve 3 out of 4 requests and a conditional on the 4th.
If-
We can certainly approve it on the condition that they get the PE stamp, too. I mean, we can do that.
Well, can you approve it on the condition that if legal says that you are able to? I mean, I think Terry gets these agenda items and usually reads through them, and I can try to call her quickly, but I'm not sure if she's not here, she may not be at work
Yeah, I guess there's a
today.
reason.
How difficult is it to get a PE stamp? I'm not in that world.
Can I speak to this issue? So landscape architects, in order to be licensed in the state of Tennessee, have to take an exam that includes grading and drainage. And other states recognize that reciprocity as well. So we do grading plans where there's no building involved many times and hand information to a civil engineer so that they can do all the drainage calcs and that. So we collaborate all the time. So we are trained and absolutely capable of doing grading, design, and stormwater management as a state requirement. We can't be licensed without that. Metro recognized that up until, as Steve was saying, a few years ago, and somehow or another that changed, and we didn't catch it because we don't do that much of it in Nashville, obviously. So to answer your question, we are qualified to do this. If Metro needs to deliberate on this specific stamp issue, we'd love to move forward with the project. Obviously, we've got schedule and construction to deadlines to meet and resolve the PE stamp if we have to. A PE should not be taking our drawings, though, and stamping that. That's against their their code of ethics, so they would have to redesign.
Exactly. They would
And
have to
that's-
stamp their design, not your design.
Yeah, so that's kind of an absurd request that we couldn't ask of a PE without Cheekwood basically paying a PE to do the entire thing again exactly the way we would do it.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, I think a PE could review the part that's important in the variance request. I mean, I think what's, the grading plan has to be but all they'd have to do is review the grading and the drainage. They wouldn't necessarily have to redesign it.
Would it be,
But the problem is that what we're allowed to do. And I can't prove something that I don't feel like I even have the authority to approve. And that's the issue here. It's not any question as to whether or not it was done properly, and I don't doubt anyone would make any changes to it either. That's the issue that we're struggling with.
should we take a short recess?
Is Rebecca calling the council?
We could encourage that.
I think she is. I had emailed earlier, but
Okay.
sometimes connection's not so great in here.
Yeah.
Do we think we could find the code provision that requires I'd like to see it.
Logan's been looking.
Yeah, I think except for that small technical detail, I agree with everybody else. We definitely, I mean, I haven't been on the Carroll Trail for a long time, but when I've been on it, I certainly enjoyed it, and I would love to see it improved and opened up to others. And per Dodd, certainly the greenways, we encourage that, and buffers, and this is a great place to do that. So if it wasn't for that one little detail, I think we'd be ready to move ahead, and thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Well, for the sake of avoiding dead air, Mr. Chairman, could we recess for about 10 minutes and look, just so we're just kind of not sitting here?
Well, I
Because
mean,
we're kind of stalemated, I guess.
my suggestion, I think, would be that we approve with the condition that they get an engineering stamp. And if ultimately that allow the project to go forward temporarily, at least with planning and construction, and if it's determined that they can't or don't want to do that and they want to have legal counsel come and give a reason, then they can come in and ask for a rehearing.
Where it is in the code?
Yeah, 56.
Does that make
It's
sense?
56,
But I mean, I think as far as our approval, it's got to be with the stamp.
Here, just the.
Yeah, that's, I support that.
And, they can go out and just pay to have it done. And I'm pretty darn sure there's someone that will take the money and stamp it and feel ethically okay with doing that. But
Worst comes to worst, they'll have to come back.
They
At
can
least,
come-
at
yeah.
least this would enable them to move forward.
come back at least some authority to us, too, that we can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd make a motion to approve as is with the condition that construction cannot commence until the grading plan has been stamped by a professional engineer as required by code.
A second.
So we've got a motion on the table. Any discussion?
Versus having legal counsel say it's all right for a landscape architect to do it?
I think procedurally that would be, if they want to go that path, they could ask for a rehearing
I think they grant variance.
and then come back before us with whatever legal.
So can we turn it back to them then to ask if they'd rather defer until next month and have legal counsel here, or to
Sure, if they'd
get
like to defer,
or get a PE?
you're always allowed to have a request to deferral. So like you could request a 30 or 60-day deferral if you wanted to.
Or we can grant it yes now with a PE stamp.
Well, I'm not sure the answer. Deferral wouldn't necessarily put us, I think we could defer for a month, but Peter, that would be a question for Cheekwood in terms of the PE stamp or not. My request would be either a PE stamp, or if it is shown appropriate, which I think we would believe it is appropriate for Hawkins Partners to stamp as a landscape architect, if that could be debated and then decision one way or the other, if we had PE or that as a condition, then that's not something that wouldn't prohibit us from continuing to move forward in preparation of grading permits and all that. So I guess I would request that friendly amendment to a PE stamp, or if legal counsel and Metro Water Services advise that a landscape architect can indeed stamp a grading plan like this.
I guess the point is it's not their determination. It's Metro Legal. Metro Legal has to decide.
Well, if Metro Legal made that
And they would have to
determination.
decide that the code allows it, which
And it's not a
Thank you,
question if you can stamp your drawings, it's a question if we can approve you to, versus a PE, because the code says a PE has to do it. So that's the variance, not so much what you can do or can't do, because obviously you're very talented and well-trained, but that's not the question.
it's certainly not a question whether it's a good policy or not. We're not making any determination on that. I mean, it sounds like it would be a good code amendment, but unless it's a code amendment, that's where we're. Now, as far as an amendment to the motion that's on the table, I guess if legal does issue an opinion that a landscape architect can sign it.
Chairman, I think what you're suggesting is legal suggests that it can, and you have the ability to approve that request.
Legal has suggested that they can?
No, I think that's what you're suggesting is not, there's two asks. One is it truly possible that they can? And if so, is that something you guys, the committee, can approve at a committee level?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it really depends upon how comfortable we are with creating a condition that may not be supported by ordinance. And I don't have a problem with making it a condition if it's contingent on the general counsel's determination. And so why don't I make a motion that we add an amendment to the motion, that we add a second condition, that if counsel to the committee determines that a landscape architect can stamp it, that the variance is granted.
That they can stamp it, and then we can approve that variance.
It's almost like,
That's the question.
it's almost
We can
like a
approve it or
condition
not.
that if Metro Council passes a new ordinance, then our decision stands. But, it does sound like there might be it does sound like there might be a chance that a landscape architect could stamp it. What I'm really concerned about is that it was taken out of the stormwater manual for a reason. And that's a pretty glaring aspect of this issue.
Well, my understanding was taken out of the manual because the manual didn't align with the code.
Well, we don't know that specifically, but that could have been the reason, yeah.
Which means from legal's opinion, the code requires a PE stamp.
I think for clarification, at one time we had discussed with the AE board, and they suggested moons ago that maybe it wasn't proper. And just like committees, people roll off, new people roll on, there's new people at the AE board, and when discussing with them, it appears that they do believe that what they cited does say that they have the ability to stamp it. So, I think, like I said, as people roll on and off, things kind of, Supreme Court, everything kind of shifts a little bit. And I think as this shifted, their interpretation was it was suitable, and that's why we're now entertaining that subject again.
And again, I think that goes to whether or not they have the capability to do it. And,
Absolutely.
And we're not even challenging that.
It's all about competency.
Yeah, and our question's only whether or not the code allows it.
Sure.
And our code may be antiquated and needs to be updated, but until it is, I'm not sure we can do anything about it. It's a problem.
Really quickly, I'm looking at the code in reference to the Stormwater Management Committee, and it says, whenever the Director of the Department of Water and Sewerage Services shall uphold enforcement, shall reject or refuse to approve a plan for noncompliance with this chapter or the regulations established in the Metro Government of Nashville-Davidson County Stormwater Management Volume 1 regulations, the owner or authorization may appeal the decision of the Director to the Stormwater Management Committee. So basically, this represents us denying them not having a stamp by a registered engineer, so they're appealing it to you in order to not have to have that stamp, and it's a violation of this chapter of the code. So they have the ability to appeal it to you when we do not approve of plans for violation of a code. So I think that's what we're looking at right now.
So it sounds like there's a pretty broad range of opportunities to request a variance in relation to approval of plans.
Correct. And any time we reject a plan because it doesn't conform to code, they can appeal it to you guys.
Could you put the provision on the screen?
Yes.
And this has happened once before. There was an appeal for party foul, and that came once before. Party foul is
The restaurant.
the restaurant. Yes.
Just wanted to check. So.
It's item number 2.
Steve, this same request came associated with,
No, it was just something that the developer/engineer did not agree with the manual, so they wanted to appeal it to the committee.
See, this is,
The committee ended up approving that one.
because of, not because of code. It's under the chapter of the manual. See, I don't know that we can do a code.
The chapter refers to the chapter in the code. And the item that is appealing is 1564-140.
So what you're saying is that you all are acting on behalf of the director. You've rejected their request, and now it's been brought to us for a variance. Does that make sense?
Well, go ahead.
well, I guess I'm uncomfortable with this, and partly because, again, clearly you're qualified. I have seen cases, though, where the boundary has been pushed, and so I'm concerned about setting a precedent if this is not in the code. And maybe would be legal guidance on whether that's a valid concern or not, but that's kind of what's in my head right now.
Dodd, can I interject one other point? So you made the observation about greenways being done, the Shelby Bottoms Greenway, Richland Creek Greenway, Harpeth River Greenway were all designed by us and graded by us, and they were on public property for the public good. And because we didn't have to go through this process, because it was public land, the issue's not PE stamp or not PE stamp. But obviously, qualifications required to do that work are being exhibited in past projects.
Again, and it's
Public
not
projects.
your qualifications.
Yeah.
That's in question. So please don't take that. I mean, we appreciate the work you're doing.
We're just.
But we're thinking about the others that come before us and the precedents that get set and the opportunity to maybe take advantage of that, or at least that's what's.
I'm there. I can only speak for me. It sounds like other board members are there too. We just don't have the clear legal authority to act on our obvious confidence in you and in your profession.
So the motion on the table now to approve with the condition that be stamped by a P. There's, and it's got a second. There's also a motion to amend that motion to read approval with the condition that they get a PE stamp unless it's determined by the Metro Legal that it's not required, or that we can approve otherwise. So that's that motion to amend that's on the table. Is there a second for that?
I'll second the motion to amend.
So there's a second motion. There's a motion to amend the original motion that would allow the condition to be met, provided legal either opines that a landscape architect can approve on the code, or that we are allowed to approve a variance from the PE requirement. Let's take a vote on any discussion on that motion.
To staff, how long does it take to get back with you all? You called her. Is something that you think she can
If either Terry or Tara had answered their phone, we probably would have had the answer, but
Within 24 hours.
I would think probably within 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm sure there's just an emergency she's dealing with. I'll speak on it. The amendment makes me a little concerned just because it's so if this, if that, and we're just tossing it out. And to me, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that difficult for the applicant to come back in and do what they have to do. And this will allow them to move forward with the project. So that's why, to me, the amendment's not a good idea.
So why don't I
Any other-
just withdraw the amendment?
Well, I don't think you can do that. You don't have to vote for it, though.
Okay.
I mean, it's already, we got to vote on it because there's been a second. Any other discussion on that? So now we're voting on just the amendment to the motion. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Well, can we go back then? Because if you're just amending it to allow for them to get a PE stamp, don't they have the option of deferring still to get the legal?
We can ask them that after this vote. So let's vote on whether or not we're going to amend the motion.
Okay.
And then before we take a vote on the motion, then we can ask them if they'd like to ask for a deferral.
Okay.
So let's take a vote on amending the motion. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Nay.
No.
Okay. All right, so the amendment to the motion fails. Now there is a motion on the floor to approve the variance request with the condition that construction cannot commence until they have a stamped grading plan stamped by a PE.
So as clarification, you're approving requests 1, 2, and 4.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And now, before we take a vote on that, would the applicant like to request a deferral till next month, or would you like us to just go ahead and vote on this approval?
So for clarification for our client, it sounds like if this is voted the way it's, the motion is, we would simply need, by the time a grading permit is sought, to have a PE stamp at that point. We don't
Before you
have to
could
come
commence
back.
construction, so before it could be issued, however the other one handle it staff-wise, before it could be issued, I don't know what timing, deadlines, that kind of stuff, but before it could be issued, you would be required to have a PE stamped grading plan.
Do we have to come back before this
No.
body to?
No, this would allow you to move forward, and that's the only condition.
Okay.
The only reason you'd have to come back before us is if somehow you decide you don't want to do that, but you want to go a different route. So you'd have to come back before us for a rehearing.
Okay. Then I think we're probably fine with the motion without a deferral.
Okay. All right. That being the case, any more discussion before we vote on this motion? All right. So the motion on the table is to approval of variance request 1, 2, and 4. So it's approval as requested, except for the fact that they're going to have a grading plan stamped by a PE before construction can commence. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Again, our comments today have nothing to do with the qualifications or the ability for you to do the work.
Not sure on a bleeding edge or something.
And we're sorry you have to jump through another hoop.
Thank you. All right. That was the last and only matter on the agenda. What do we got for business? Wow, nothing. Okay. Anybody have anything they want to add then to the business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Todd's ready to get back to work. All right. There's a movement and a second. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.